So, hey, everybody. Today we have Justin Stoney. He's a professional vocal coach in New York City, and he works with clients all around the world. Justin is the founder of New York Vocal Coaching, and he's appeared in NBC, CBS, Fox News, and is often on Huffington Post doing live interviews with celebrity singers. I'm just super excited to have you join me today to talk about all this actor marketing, promotion, and tell us a little bit about yourself. Thank you. I'm very interested to learn how you got to where you are.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's an honor to be here, and I'm happy to help out. And yeah, I'm a professional voice teacher and vocal coach, and my company is New York Vocal Coaching. And for me, I did start off as an actor, and becoming a voice teacher was actually the last thing I ever wanted to do. It was specifically that. I said, that's the one thing I will never do. If I can't make it as an actor and singer and performer, I'll go back to school, I'll get a fancy degree, I'll become a doctor, something like that. But I'm not going to teach voice. That was the last thing I ever wanted to do, because I'm from Michigan, and when you come from a small town and you say, well, I'm going to go to New York and I want to be an actor, I want to be a singer, people say, well, so what if it doesn't work out? Well, you could always teach.
Mm-hmm.
I said, oh,
yeah,
no.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, that's the last thing. So I always would have thought, growing up and working on my craft, that if I ever taught, that would be some sort of a failure, that those that can't do teach.
Yeah.
Now, I was definitely wrong about that, and I fell in love with what I'm doing, and this is definitely my calling and my passion and joy in life, doing what I'm doing. But it's funny how sometimes you think, well, the last thing I would ever want to do is sometimes actually the exact thing you are meant to do, and that was how it was in my circumstance.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm curious though, like the actual transition process into doing this. I mean, I know it was kind of your last thing in mind, and now you're in love with it. But you started as an actor, so how did you actually start teaching people, and how did you sort of get your first client?
For me, it was kind of a really miraculous story. I graduated and I moved to New York, and I was within 2 weeks of being here, starting to do some auditions. And I was waiting in a holding room for an audition, and an older gentleman comes in and he says, does anybody in this room play the piano? And I just kind of raised my hand, and I was the only one. And he said, you, kid, come out here in the hall. I need to talk to you. And he said, well, how well do you play the piano? I said, yeah, pretty well. He said, do you think that you can sight read? And I said, yeah, I can sight read. He says, do you think you can play an audition? And I said, yeah, I think I could. He gets on his cell phone. He says, yeah, I got some kid here. The kid says he can do it. Okay, we'll take the kid. Guy says, go back into the room, finish your audition, and then come down the hall. We need an accompanist now. Our accompanist dropped out at the last second. I said, okay. So I go back into the waiting room, and the monitor says to me, you know who that is, right? I said, oh, I don't know who that is. He says, that's Barry Moss. He cast The Cosby Show. He casts all these movies. He casts all these Broadway shows. He says, you better be ready. I said, oh, no. So I finished my audition, never been more nervous in my life. I just got to New York, and I'm playing literally for Broadway stars that I recognize. And my jaw is on the floor as one after the next comes in, and I'm accompanying them. For some reason in this audition, they weren't given the music, some of the songs. I had to teach them the songs. So here I am teaching Broadway stars that I recognize 2 weeks into New York. And I was very bold, being, just coming in from Michigan, young actor. And I said to Barry at the end, I said, Barry, don't pay me. Take 2 headshots and call me when I'm right for something.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he took the headshots and he said, well, that's great. We'll call you. But he said, I want to tell you something that I saw in you today. He said, I saw somebody that could make a great vocal coach. The way you worked with those people today. And he's like, I know you want to act, but I want you to consider vocal coaching because I see that you have that gift. And I thought to myself, a vocal coach? No, that's the last thing, as you know, that's the last thing I would ever want to do. But when you've been in New York for 2 weeks, one of the top casting directors of all time has freak scenario happens and he's saying to you, you have a gift for this. You say, okay, I guess I'll listen. I mean, I was going to be a bartender. I had my bartending license. I was going to try to get a bartending job and act. But then you got one of the top casting directors ever in a fluke circumstance telling you this is something I see in you. So I said, okay, if Barry Moss says so, I better do it. So I made these little flyers, and it was just for accompaniment and vocal coaching. Prepare your auditions, and I started putting them out there. And literally, and this was just in the audition studios around New York. Literally within 2 or 3 months, I had a full studio. People never wanted to leave, and I've been a singer for a long time, and I just sort of had instincts, not just on how to coach the music, but how to give people that vocal tip that would just make their voice unlock. And I got so much joy from that. I said, maybe this is what I want to pursue. I've got such joy from helping people discover their voices or that fix that would make their voice work. And so from that time on, I studied, I read every vocal book that you could find and took every course, studied with master teachers, and I made it my craft, my pursuit in life. And 15 years later, we have now the biggest vocal studio in New York, and I've taught over 20,000 voice lessons, and had some folks with some nice success and things like that. So it's just, it's one of those New York stories that's, you can't make it up.
That's awesome. I think it's really, really important for actors to kind of keep in mind that sort of serendipitous type of things can happen, and you can't be closed-minded, because you might really believe that something is perfectly right for you, but then like something new that you never considered, if you give it a shot, it might even be more right for you, But let's talk a little bit. I'd like to sort of transition into the whole idea of how actors can actually kind of earn money. Like some of them actually might be natural at teaching or, coaching people on something. Some of them might take photos or whatever, like lots of actors have different ways to earn money outside of simply getting some sort of part-time job or something. So if you don't mind, I'd like to talk a little bit about that, like how you kind of started your own business. And I know that you posted flyers and stuff, but if you had to give actors advice and they're looking to earn a little bit of extra money on the side, but obviously doing something that they're good at and they're going to provide a good service to people. It's not just like, scamming someone out of money. But what would you say to an actor who wants to earn some extra money?
Well, a few things. First of all, you can't be afraid to see yourself in a different role. That was one of my first mistakes when I was transitioning from actor to voice teacher, is when I was doing both, I was afraid that the people in the acting world would see me coaching and they'd say, well, what are you, a coach or an actor? And I was afraid. Now, that eventually I went all in for voice teaching because I fell in love with it. But there was a time when I was doing both early on. And one doesn't need to be afraid of that. You need to make sure that you are branding yourself full on in the service that you want to provide. Because I think a lot of people are hesitant to take a service from somebody who looks like they're just trying to make money. Ideally, you are not just trying to make money. You really love this thing and you are really good at it alongside the acting that you're good at. And so you want to make sure that the service that you are offering is distinct, that it doesn't look like actor who also does this on the side to make money. You want to separate in a way the actor life, and then don't fear the branding of whatever that service is that you provide.
Like a second website or something?
I would highly advise that you don't have like one website where it's like acting, directing, coaching, blah, blah, blah. To me, it should be like, let's say it's headshots, for example. that it should be a separate headshot service that is being fully branded and fully cared for independently of the acting. And again, that goes for every service. So the branding is super important. Then I definitely think that, marketing is going to be very important, and having a great presence online is a wonderful thing. Website, social media, Google AdWords can also help to stand out a little bit, especially if you have a niche service and you really want to pinpoint people who are looking for transcriptions of rock songs that don't exist. Like if that's your thing, then you can pinpoint those ads for a specific search.
Yeah.
So that, you find the right people.
Mm-hmm. I think so. This is interesting. I kind of have like two sides to our conversation right now for people listening. There's the one side of the business, which we're definitely going to discuss a little bit more. But before I continue with that, I was just curious. Let's talk a little bit about actually like being in control of your voice for your actual acting career. I'm sure that you have a lot to say on that topic, and I want to make sure that we cover it. How important is it that actors who are not voiceover actors or actors who are not singers still get vocal training?
I think it's important for many. There's certainly actors that get by without it. And so I won't pretend that training is a prerequisite to success, because there are some people that just get by. But we have at New York Vocal Coaching a sister company, which is New York Speech Coaching. And we have 7 or 8 speech coaches, and they work with public speaking, accent reduction, voice enhancement, and also a lot of actors, and preparing them for whether it's TV, film, or stage to have command over one's voice. Really, it comes down to confidence and longevity. Longevity, you want your voice to last the span of your career, but confidence is huge, because if you know you are a master of your voice, you're not just getting by, but you're a master of it. You can create nuances and details in your vocal presence, just like you would do in your physical presence or your emotional presence. You just have an extra confidence regardless of what the role is. So, it is very important, and many choose to pursue it.
Yeah. I think that that's really important to keep in mind. I mean, you just talked a little bit about accent reduction. And I mean, I had the opportunity to interview casting director Mary Lynn Henry, who wrote the book, How to Be a Working Actor. And we were talking about like the audition process and how, I mean, she was talking about how important it is that your speech is very, easy to understand. You don't mumble things. And also saying that if you have like full control over your accent, you don't kind of get boxed into certain things. So I think that that's awesome, Yeah,
we do accent reduction, and then also accent creation.
That's awesome.
Learn specific accents or dialects. So but I think a lot of times you do want that standard American dialect, so that people don't hear that you're from Minnesota or you're from Alabama, because it does sort of pigeonhole you a little bit.
Yeah. Although it is interesting, I have noticed a few actors who I've spoken to and interviewed with who have very particular accents, especially if they can kind of wipe the accent away at will. They tend to actually be remembered more by people in the industry, and they'll like get called in more often, which I find interesting. I guess because the accent makes them stand out, and then the casting director is like wowed when they get into character and it's completely gone.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. I could see it. I could see that. I think the key is the control.
Mm-hmm.
Turn that on and off switch.
Yeah, and that's definitely, it's very impressive when you can do that. Cool. So that's awesome. I mean, before we shift gears back into the business and money-making side of it, is there anything else that you think is important for actors to be aware of, whether it's related to auditioning or actually being on set, that's, related to the stuff that you teach about voice and all of that?
Well, in what context? I just want to make sure I answer the question.
In terms of, how to give themselves more chances or allow them to move their careers forward more effectively, what are there any useful tips or things that they could know that might be helpful in auditions or anything like that?
Well, I would just say to embrace it as a major part of the character that you're playing and a major part of how you present yourself. It's very easy, I think, for people to focus on, for example, their appearance and spend a lot of time looking the part and dressing the part and getting into the physical character, getting into the emotional character, getting into the storytelling, the objectives, things like that, and forgetting that the vocal life is something all its own. And there are definitely actors out there that do the voice first. And I've had some of them, one celebrity, I'm not going to mention his name, but I have a celebrity actor. He's also a singer. He's a guy that everybody would know. And the very first thing that he does is find the voice of the character. And I just learned that in talking to him over several lessons. And I just found that very surprising, that his process is to find the voice of the character. And when he feels like he's in the character's voice, then he feels like he's in the character. So just don't neglect it as one of the primary aspects of how you present yourself in a character and how you present yourself in your auditions and interactions.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. I mean, voice is, half of it. Like how you look is one half and how you sound is the other half.
Okay.
You only get two senses that you can see when you're watching somebody, right? Basically, is hearing them and seeing them. Hopefully you can't smell them or anything.
Yes, television, I don't know about that. Yeah. Technology, thank God.
So cool. I think that's really good to keep in mind. Really, really make sure to pay attention to your voice because it is half of what's going on. And that idea of like finding the character's voice. I'm all about systems, and so I think it could be beneficial for an actor to sort of like create some sort of checklist for themselves before every audition, and add onto their, have I found the character's voice? Have I, dressed, in a way that complements the character or whatever, So that's awesome. Thank you.
Sure. And just to add one other thing, I think there's some actors out there who are notorious for kind of always playing the same character. And they're playing themselves regardless of whether it's set in the 1800s or set, in the future or set in the present. They get criticized for always sort of being the same person. One of the giveaways is that they are always using the same voice. And adapt your voice to each character that you're playing. It's definitely a step ahead.
Interesting. Excellent. So I have an interesting question for you now. And both of us are business owners, right? And I mean, we both started in a creative field. You started in acting, I started in filmmaking. But that being said, I'm curious to, because we both know so much about the acting world and the importance. A lot of people talk about brand or finding your type or finding like who you are. And so we're kind of talking about like your range and that your voice can sort of, if you're always speaking with the same exact voice, it can kind of pigeonhole you into the same character. So my question is, like, an actor might be wondering, if I want to sort of like market myself, how does like my brand and my type kind of, with our businesses, we obviously want to hone in on something super specific, like we discussed earlier. But with an actor, you have the whole side of like my brand, who's my natural voice and everything, but then you also like want to get more variety. So what are your recommendations? Should an actor try to expand their range as much as possible, or find something very specific first and then kind of like work that and then expand their range? How does that work if you have an opinion?
I have a strong opinion on that, which is that variety is the spice of vocal life. Mm-hmm. A lot of times people want to find their voice. Okay, I got to take some voice lessons because I got to find my voice. This is a common request. Mm-hmm. And the thinking is off from the start when you think, I got to find it, right? Whether we're talking singing or speech, finding one's voice is actually a lot more about finding all kinds of voices that you never thought were you and incorporating them into yourself. having such a broad spectrum of sounds that you can make singing and speech allows you, when you're in the moment as yourself or in a character, to fully express things in ways that you didn't think that you could. So a lot of times in both singing and in speech sessions, we're exploring bizarre sounds that don't sound right to the ear, isolating different qualities, whether it be very bright, very nasal, very dark, something very high in pitch, whatever it might be. We're exploring those different aspects where you say, well, that doesn't sound anything like me. Mm-hmm. And then once you've explored the outer parameters, you go back to yourself and you can find a lot more nuance and variety. And again, that goes for singing and for speech. Finding oneself is actually a lot more like losing oneself.
Mm-hmm. That makes perfect sense. I actually just did an interview on clown acting, and it was really interesting to me because we were discussing how when an actor goes way beyond what is the typical acting, they suddenly have a much wider range of accessibility of how to express themselves, but in a more broad way. So it's kind of like, I did an interview just the other day and we were talking about providing added value to the casting director. Like you're not just going in and doing the audition. Your job is to be able to provide the most value possible. And part of providing value is being able to expand your range of how you can, present yourself to the world.
Absolutely.
I think that's really cool. So,
yeah. And people, especially actors, sometimes are afraid to go too far because they don't want to be hammy. They don't want to be a bad actor or be presentational. And it's not about that. When you expand what you are capable of, even if it would be phony to go that far as a final product, just by having gone that far allows you to know what your capabilities are, and you find nuances within that from there.
Yeah, I do a similar process actually, even with headshots, shooting headshots. If someone's like struggling to get like a slightly maybe dark or more intense expression, I'll be like, let's just go creepy and like the Joker face or something, and then they're like, but this is ridiculous. It's like, no, just play with it, because then it makes it easier to pull back. And like, yeah,
genius.
That's awesome. I think that's really important. So yes, actors, explore your voice and go as far as you can with your range, because it's only going to allow you to provide more value, show yourself in a deeper way. That's cool. Let's see now. Okay, so I'd like to shift back gears, back into actors earning some extra money for themselves. Again, as you started as an actor, and there's definitely the challenge of money. It's a real thing. And if you can sort of, as an actor, figure out how to freelance, let's say, to earn extra money. And like you said, as long as you're actually providing people real value and you want to, do it the right way, and you're not just taking people's money and providing them a crappy service. So my question is to you, like, how do you think, do you have any suggestions as to how an actor might be able to find a service that they could provide? And then how can they, it can sound kind of complicated, like, oh, there's so many things, social media, blah, 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 Google AdWords and stuff. Like, how are there any like sort of simpler ways, like you mentioned earlier, like putting flyers up and stuff, any sort of ways that they might be able to market themselves that don't take too much like technical know-how and like a ton and time-consuming research?
Yes, I think so. Whether it's social media, a website, flyers, what one needs to do is decide who are the people that I want to serve.
Target market, yeah.
That's a key question.
Mm-hmm.
Who do I want to serve? Because you don't want to, for example, with voice lessons, you don't want to just take garden variety voice lessons, right? If I put up a flyer and it just says, voice lessons, and people are ripping off a little phone number, I don't see what would make somebody do that. why would I just say, oh, voice lessons, I'm gonna get these voice lessons now. I need to know who this person is and what they're about, what's their mission, and why do they want to serve me. And so if you're an actor trying to get into many different outside peripheral fields as a source of income, you have to think, who are these people that I want to serve? Why do I want to serve them? And what specific backgrounds and skill sets do I have that will allow me to serve them? If you present yourself in a way that is very sincere and has a real heart for specific people, it's very attractive. Yeah. If we lead with the service, it's not very attractive. If I just say headshots, why should I? Voice lessons, well, why should I? But I think, oh, this guy, Justin, who clearly pours his heart and soul into this and has a mission to help people blend their singing voice with their inner journey and have those walk side by side. They say, well, that's attractive. That maybe I'll try a lesson and see how it goes, Or if I see Martin, and he was doing filmmaking, and then he had this vision for empowering actors and headshots and merging that process and helping other people to create businesses as well. And we think, this is about more than the headshots. You're very clear about who you're serving. So you have to to make it super practical, you can go ahead and make a mission statement. And it can just be 3 points or 5. Here's what I want to do. Here's my mission. Here's why I want to do it. And here's who I want to serve. And if you can actually put some of that in the flyer or on the website, whatever it might be, that's what makes it attractive. That's what separates it from just garden variety services to you serving specific people.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. You just made me think of some notes that I was making down from a book recently. It's called Just Listen by Mark Goulston. I don't know if you've read it before. I have the audio book of it. It's actually about like psychology and listening to people at like an emotional level. And I think that it's interesting because when you, as you say, you pick a very specific target market, you figure out like what it is that you want to provide, or ideas that you have that you can provide. And then I think that a way that you can sort of go even deeper or potentially make your flyer even more compelling is find some of those actual people out there. Maybe you know some already who are in your target market, and then you ask them some stuff like, this is a service that I'm considering offering, but if someone in the industry were to offer this service, what would be some of your first like thoughts in terms of like, do you have any like harsh thoughts about that, or like, like, whoa, what are you trying to sell me or anything? You sort of like find out that stuff, and then really just kind of go deep and ask them a few questions about it to find out what their real feelings are. I think that if you do that and you're very specific with the people that you talk to, you can sort of figure out ways to come up with some of those or answers to some of those objections before you even start. And it might make it more, a little bit easier to sort of, create something that will call out to them.
Mm-hmm. It's a very good question. Yeah, to create almost a little mini survey to get some information on, what people really want.
Yeah, I think people have a tendency, and I feel like, I've done this too, that you're just like, oh, I have this idea, I want to go with it. And then you just start like going out and like promoting it and doing all kinds of stuff. And you waste like 6 months trying to do it. And you never really found out like why people are actually like saying no. So I want to now ask a little bit more about actually, are there ways, do you think that like, let's say between flyers or like going and like networking in person with people, do you think like one is more effective than another? Because both of those are things that I feel like anybody who doesn't really have any technology skills can easily do to try to get a few clients. Let's say they figured out who they want to talk to and, they kind of know the general objections at this point. Do you recommend using flyers, or do you think that it's more potent to sort of talk to people in person?
Well, the thing about, if we're talking New York, the amazing thing about New York is the power of that networking. And I've noticed that actors that want to do sort of what you're suggesting with creating side businesses for themselves while they are acting have incredible success with the word of mouth and with the networking.
Mhm.
So that's very specific to the New York actor scene. It's such a small place, excuse me. It's such a small place when you really think about it. I mean, the island of Manhattan, or
Yeah.
it's very small. It's like mile wise.
Mhm.
And you've got all of these people doing this similar kind of thing. Word of mouth spreads so fast. So any networking opportunities that one can engage in is definitely going to be helpful. And that's where one of my earlier points, I think, becomes really important, is don't be afraid to brand yourself as something other than an actor. Because the thing is, if you're an actor in New York City, there's lots of networking opportunities. There's actually, I believe there should be too many. Most actors should think that there's too many. If you think that there's not enough, I think there might be a problem going on. There should be too many, really, because it's so easy to meet other actors and directors and people in the arts and go and do something.
Mhm.
That is a networking opportunity. You actually have to start turning things down because there's so many. But the issue is, during these networking opportunities, are you just thinking, well, I got to make sure I'm, letting everybody know I'm an actor? Or do you have the confidence to say, I teach yoga, I do headshots, I do personal training, and not, will that make you think that they're going to think you're a failure?
Hmm.
Or that you're not making it as an actor, or that you need this side job. See, people are afraid to associate themselves with the side gig, because if they associate themselves with the side gig, people will think, well, they're not cutting it as an actor. They can't really be all that great if they need this other thing. And so then they don't actually do the branding that is necessary in the networking opportunities. So I think the flyers are obviously great. There's lots of rehearsal studios and places in New York where people look at that stuff. So you don't want to neglect that. But take advantage of the networking opportunities and have the boldness and the confidence to say, it does not impact my acting to say I'm also this other thing and I care about it.
Yeah. I think that that's really interesting. And the question that it makes me want to ask is just, when an actor, let's say the actor is shooting or edits demo reels or something for people, right? That's their side gig. When they introduce themselves to other people, should they say like, hey, my specialty is editing demo reels, I also act? Or should they completely ignore the I also act part when they're talking to them?
I don't know that I also act is necessary because everybody is an actor, and the context where it's valuable to say I'm an actor is few and far between. Even if you met a casting director at a bar, if they were interested in you, they would call you in. You don't have to tell them about your acting career. They're going to infer that they could call you in. I mean, the casting world knows that they can get you whenever they want. You don't have to convince people that you're an actor, right? The time to convince them of that is in the audition room.
Yeah,
Outside of the audition room, anybody can just say I'm an actor,
yeah,
right?
sure.
The easiest thing in the world to say I'm an actor. Now you're not going to hide the fact, so don't get me wrong here. We're not going to hide. We're not going to hide it, but there's no reason to lead with it. It's not going to give anybody any value in a social setting to tell everybody about your acting. What it might benefit you to do is talk about this other business that could potentially bring in a client for you.
Yeah, cool. Excellent. So I have one final question. We're almost out of time here, and I want to respect your time, and I appreciate it. In terms of like, we talked a little bit about like networking and how quickly word of mouth spreads. So what do you recommend? What would be like your top suggestion for actors who are doing earning money on the side from a freelance type of gig to get more referrals from their current clients?
Oh, sure. Well, I mean, I think that there's some great strategies. You can certainly offer incentives. I mean, I think that that's one of the greatest ways to get new clients if you're kind of just starting off, and reward your clients that you already have. And that can be lots of different things. You can get 50% off your next session for every person that you bring in, or a free session, or sometimes people have like loyalty programs and things like that, or like little cards, almost like at a coffee shop. But you want to definitely create incentives where if they are loyal to you, or they are bringing in other clients, that you reward them somehow for that.
Did you create a referral program when you were first building your business?
Well, see, now I did not.
You learned along the way what you should have done.
Well, see, for me, the thing is, and this is, I mean this humbly, I never had any problem getting clients. People never wanted to leave. That's the secret to my business.
So do a great job is the number one way to get referrals.
Yes, maybe that's a great way to say it. But when I was booked within 3 months, it's because people never left. It's like I had a very slow stream, but once somebody would come, they would stay. And that process has actually never stopped for me, because we have now, like I said, 25 people on staff, and got a floor of a building in Midtown, and it's the expansion for us was just sort of explosive, and we didn't even have to necessarily think about some of the marketing. It just sort of was right. But when I see people, that's for me, that's my calling. This is what I,
Yeah.
when we're talking about when you're kind of doing acting and doing another business, and you want to split your time, that's when you're going to need, things like a loyalty program and referrals, because for us, we don't want to have more and more people coming, honestly, because they would just get out of control. But when you are trying to build a business from scratch, those kind of strategies are super important. So I never did that myself, but I've known several actors who do exactly what you're talking about, and I know that strategy is very good for building a business.
Excellent. All right. Well, I really appreciate your time. This was a really, really fun interview. Thank you so much.
A lot of fun to be here, and I appreciate you having me on.